Well, hello. Thank you for joining me. I feel like I've just been on and I just got off last night. It's been quite a quick turnaround. So the memes keep rolling in and many are quite clever and funny, and I'll be sharing a few of those at the end of this live because they are quite amusing. But of course, this is a really serious story. One that begins with a misconduct complaint, a search warrant, a police convoy heading from Kidlington in the dead of the night. Dramatic stuff. Now, in this live, I'm going to attempt to cut through the noise. If I was a rather word salady person, I'd say I'm trying to curate for you all the facts of the matter. And I think that's probably a good service. So it can be sort of the go-to spot just to get some facts, and then you can pad it out yourself with what you do with your own research. I'm also going to be addressing some of the more controversial angles of this story, of course, because who can resist? And I'm also going to be delving in near the end the King's actual legal position. I went into that. I thought, well, look, I can be of service finding out exactly the position of that, depending on what Andrew Mountbatten Windsor actually comes out with. And so I thought that would be interesting as well. So let's get into it. So first off, I'm going to cover the arrest. And really how that unfolded, and make sure that the facts that we know so far are just laid out for you in a simple manner. And I'm going to go to your comments too. I've been reading them, and there's been quite a few comments that are really relevant to what I was going to bring up anyway. So you must be able to read my mind. I tell you, it's uncanny. All right. So this photograph, which is, of course, will go down in history. I was interested to see my reaction to this photo. My first reaction was, a bit of horror, shock. Then there was at the outer periphery, outer corners, nearly some sympathy. And I said to myself, Shauna, stop it, because I think sometimes a sympathetic response is just training. It's just what we're trained to do. We're brought up to be, kind, nice people, and sometimes it's just not appropriate. So I constantly have to sort of pull myself up and say, come on, girl, stick to the facts. What are you doing? We cannot let your emotions cloud this actual situation. So after giving myself a thorough telling off, I've got to say that you're looking at a man who is facing consequences of his actions. I think that would be the best way I could sum it up. So let's go into the actual procedure just really, really quickly. So Mountbatten Windsor was seen leaving Elsham Police Station in Norfolk, near the Sandringham Estate, about 7 p.m. London time. Now, as you know, clearly he was slouched in the rear of the vehicle, obviously trying not to be photographed. Now, they're saying that it was between 11 and 12 hours in custody, just a little bit over 11 hours in custody. And so as of me going live today, he's not been formally charged. Now, he was arrested so that they could question him under caution, and they have indicated that there will be more questions under caution to come. But the formal, it's really weird the way the UK justice system works, I think, but the formal charge hasn't been laid as of me going live. So we'll see what happens there. So the searches on his Norfolk residences have concluded, which of course they're talking about Wood Farm and Marsh Farm when they're talking about Norfolk. But the searches in Berkshire, which is Royal Lodge, are still continuing. So presumably he didn't get a chance to get rid of everything that was in Royal Lodge. Evidently there was, it's a 30 room mansion, I believe, and he just didn't have a chance to clear out all his junk, and presumably a lot of documents, one would think. So Thames Valley Police have been planning the operation for several days. We have now been told they're speaking to journalists, they're giving out information, they're trying to be as transparent as possible. Now, we know that the police, various branches of the police force, were assessing the complaint against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Now, they had to apply for a search warrant, and by applying for a search warrant, they had to convince a magistrate that it was relevant and that it was important and to grant it, please. And they have to be granted those in order to do the necessary searches that they're still conducting at Royal Lodge. So obviously legal approval was needed before this raid and arrest. So it's interesting to hear that it was kept confidential, they claim. Detectives selected for the confie op. That's a little bit of insider police talk. I've always wanted to be a pretend policewoman, so confie op were unlikely to have been briefed beforehand. And I believe that. I believe that the detectives and police officers on the raid were unlikely to be briefed because they don't risk those details actually being distributed, particularly to the media, for the safety of the police officers too, because you could get, a crazy, fervent, rabid royalist placing themselves to defend the ex-Prince Andrew, if anyone indeed could be found in the entire UK to actually fill that role. But having people in my family that are actually police officers, it is pretty normal to keep operation details confidential. Now, officers may have been told to report early. Don't be late. This is a big one. They had to hand over their mobile phones, of course, in case they were, thinking about making a cool million by selling confidential video or photographs. Now, they claim that there was no communication with the palace. Now, there's a great deal of guffawing about that. People say, of course, the king knew. Of course, they would have given him the courtesy to be told. However, they are sticking to the point that no, Buckingham Palace was not informed. The king was not informed in advance of the pending arrest. And I guess we just have to go with what's announced. Whether you choose to believe it or not is up to you, of course. Now, I've already covered where the warrants were. Apparently, there was 20 officers from Thames Valley Police. They were supported by Norfolk Police. I gave a bit of a giggle and a laugh last night because, the Norfolk Police had to talk to CNN and make it very, very clear that they were very definitely assisting Thames Valley Police in this, Now, officers travelled 130 miles from Thames Valley HQ through the night from Kidlington, Oxfordshire, and it takes them about 3 hours, evidently. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to hear conversations in the car as they were heading down. And I imagine that they would have been quite nervous. I imagine that this would be a really big deal in all their careers, in all those 20 officers' careers. This would be a defining moment. It'll be a moment, a raid they'll always remember. They travelled in a convoy of unmarked police cars and arrived, as you know, at Wood Farm shortly after 8 a.m. So it's interesting, though, that there was a raid. I looked into it. There was a raid on Lord Mandelson's property. I sort of vaguely knew that there was. The difference was he wasn't arrested. There was a raid, but he wasn't arrested. Whereas Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested at the scene and taken directly in for questioning. So evidently the arrest was just standard police procedure. I looked into, just for fun, because, I figured that you might be interested. I'll bring up another photograph for you to look at while I prattle on. But the custody suite procedure in the UK goes as follows. At the police station, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor would have been checked in by a custody sergeant. Then the sergeant had to confirm the arrest grounds, that they were lawful, that there was authorised detention. He has to check all that. He has to search Andrew for items that could cause him harm. He would have been required to hand over any personal items, a phone, jewellery, watch, belt or tie. And he would have to undergo a risk assessment. People were saying, I hope people are checking in on him, looking after his mental health. Well, they do that at the police station. It's part of being questioned under caution that they do actually assess people. They assess their mental health. They assess if they have any medical issues. They assess that they are under the influence of any substances. Officers would explain his rights. including the right to free and independent legal advice. Interestingly, Andrew Mountbatten's lawyer that actually defended him against Virginia Giuffre had not been called and had no idea that this was unfolding and was not called to help. So maybe Andy can't afford him anymore, because back then, of course, the Queen was footing the bill for the lawyer. I believe he's a bit of a tight ass, though. I mean, let's face it, the guy's been doing under-the-radar financial deals on top of numerous very large and hefty inheritances and trust funds set up in his name by the royal family, by the Queen Mother, by his father. So, the fact that he's a pauper, I just find very hard to believe. Also, Andrew Loney has revealed that some deals were to the tune of $3.84 million and some others $5 million, where he was presumably paid for services in these under-the-radar financial deals. So where's all the money gone, Andy? Too much Amazon shopping. Evidently, Royal Lodge is filled with Amazon packages, and he just cannot contain his spending. So finally, custody suite procedure. He had the right to notify someone of his arrest. So there are codes of practice to all this, and they would have been followed, very definitely. They're not going to risk mucking this up. Can you imagine if they mucked up this one? Okay, so the King's statement I put up in the community very late last night because I was working on all of this. I won't read it to you because I know you've already read it, but I think the most really profound thing in it was the reference to him, that stark reference to him as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. I know there was no alternative. I know the King had to refer to him that way, but it just really pointed out that now distance and how far he has indeed fallen. So let me state clearly was another strong phrase. The law must take its course. So like I said, I won't read it out to you because it is up on the community if you want to peruse it in more detail. So getting on to this is from the Inside Scoop from Paula Frolick. She did a live with Tom Sykes. There was a few interesting points, and that's why I looked into the legality of the claim that Tom's making, which is a perfectly relevant and real claim about the Paul Burrell defence. He's quoting a real thing and a real concern. And it did change the course of the interaction of justice and the royal family because it came so perilously close in the Paul Burrell trial. And indeed, when Paul Burrell alleged that he told the Queen about, taking Diana's possessions into his care, over 2,000 of them, some of them very intimate sort of things, but we'll just skip over that because that's an inconvenient truth, shall we? It got down to the fact that in order to challenge that statement, they would have had to have got Queen Elizabeth in the courtroom. Now, the monarch is not compelled to ever go into court. They are protected. That's part of the system, part of the constitutional monarchy. It's supposed to work that way. The monarch is indeed above the law because they are the law, if you get what I mean. So, but it is perfectly valid. So I looked into it to see, well, is there a way around this? And there actually is. So I'm going to share that. But let's just share what Paula, she did this brilliant summary of their live. It's really worth heading over to her Substack to read. So this is what Andrew actually did. This is the misconduct that is the point of this investigation. I think it's really clear to go back to that because there's a lot of people sort of claiming, probably because they genuinely don't know, that it's more the salacious, and I have to word it very carefully because otherwise YouTube just chucks me off. So people are getting angry at me because I'm not saying it in stark enough terms. the sort of allegations that Virginia Giuffre drew our attention to, and I can't. I'm just got to be very, careful how I phrase things. So this is the misconduct charge. Andrew hounded his aide Amanda Thirst for confidential government reports about the Iceland banking bailout. She obtained them, so it'll be interesting to see if she actually has to be questioned. He received classified analysis about which banks were at risk and what the government was advising. And then within minutes, as you know, within 5 minutes, he forwarded that information to David Haviland. Actually, I think this one was only about 3 minutes. Writing something to the effect, thought you might want to take a look at this before you make any decisions, okay? So there is the charge, and of course, if the palace has indeed given access to royal emails which are not able to be demanded under freedom of information, then it's a straight case of corruption. Paula points out that if the proceeds from the information was above 35,000, then it's a straight case of corruption, which I found really interesting information. Okay, now the Paul Burrell defence, and then I'll get on to new information I've found. Now imagine Andrew facing charges of sharing confidential government information with financier David Haviland and claims he told his brother, so in other words confided in the king, got, if not explicit approval, implicit cover. Now this would all just be probably hearsay, of course, a he said thing. The moment that defence is entered, Charles is no longer a sympathetic bystander. He becomes a potential co-conspirator. Now, this is valid, and I'll credit it to Tom Sykes that he's named it the Paul Burrell defence, and he was one of the first to bring it up. I think, I know I did bring it up as well, but I'll credit Tom, because he's really been emphasising it and making it part of the public consciousness of this story. So now, legal, and then I'll get on to your comments and I'll get on to some lighter, funner stuff, but the king's legal position. These are the facts I've found so far. Right now, the king is not involved at all. Now, that's important. From a legal standpoint, he's not involved at all. So we've got to make that clear. Andrew hasn't claimed that he's told him anything yet. So legally, the monarch's outside the frame, the legal frame of this so far. Now, if Andrew keeps it that way and nothing changes, the investigation will stay focused entirely on Andrew, on no one else other than his other nefarious little villainous friends, okay? If Andrew ever claims that he told the king details, it becomes political. It becomes a political argument, not a legal one. And when I say political, I'm going to explain to you in a minute. The king still cannot be compelled to testify. Now, however, this is the however that no one's actually bringing to your attention. So you'll be ahead of the game. You'll know more than everyone else. The king could volunteer evidence, but that would be constitutionally very explosive. It would be a really risky move, but he can choose to do that. Also, written answers are permissible and written answers are possible. Again, voluntary. But he doesn't have to appear in court. He could answer the charges that Andrew makes against him that make him a possible co-conspirator in writing. A defence in writing, because appearing in court, Tom's right, is completely unthinkable. It won't happen. So there's two alternatives there. He can volunteer to testify, probably not in court, probably maybe a video testimony, it won't happen, or written answers. Now, another alternative is investigators can approach palace staff, but not the king himself. So they can ask for evidence that could be made available to debunk Andrew's claims that the king was involved. It could involve things where Andrew might have to come up with proof of a day or time of the conversation. Paul Burrell indeed had to. And then the palace spokesman can check the diaries and check where the king was and check whether that was indeed possible or not, that they indeed ever had that meeting. If it's found that the king was actually over in Italy painting a watercolour, then it would really undermine Andrew's claims. Okay. So they can approach palace staff. The crown privilege protects the monarch's communications, which is interesting. So a lot of it comes down to what King Charles III voluntarily decides to do, if indeed this becomes an issue. It may not. Parliament can question ministers, not the king. And Starmer came out this morning, desperate to be relevant, saying that he's not going to stop any questioning from the ministers. He'll stand out of the way because, of course, he is just lapping this all up. Let's get rid of the monarchy. The sovereign remains shielded by design. And even in a crisis, the king is legally immune. So these are all facts I found out for you. Are you impressed? Do you feel informed? Any fallout would be political, not judicial. So it's all, it's messy, isn't it? It's messy. So I'm going to go to some of your comments now. Then I've got a few things to say about Sarah. I've got a few things to say about public perception and evidence of that. But I'll get on to some of the things that you have said because there's been a lot of insightful comments. Actually, here's a Sarah one. I can give you what I know. So this is Alicia. So is anyone watching Sarah? Because I wouldn't put it past her to run. Great question. Now, there was a further comment down here, and it was about her being in Belize. Now, with respect, cannot find any evidence of that Rona, of her being in, is it Central America? I need to get out my schoolgirl geography. I think it's Central America. Yes, lovely place to be out having a begging bowl, but no, last reports were more over in the Middle East, which you would know and you'd be aware of. Maybe you have some information I can't access. I searched and searched and searched, and I can't find proof of Belize. So this is what Andrew Loney has recently said, because he believes that there are multimillionaires, billionaires in Dubai and the surrounding countries of Bahrain and Qatar who are probably still bankrolling Fergie. This is a direct quote. In Britain, neither Sarah or Andrew will be socially accepted again, whatever they try to do or wherever they go. But in the Middle East, no one will care about what they got up to. Isn't that dreadful? There are people there, royalty, politicians and business types. Wonder what sort of business types would embrace Sarah Ferguson at this point, whom Sarah can quite happily sponge off and who will be happy to bankroll both of them. So that's the sort of last official statement from a trusted source. And I have also done my own research, and I can't find anything on that. So it was interesting. This was quite moving, I thought. Alyssa Anderson, who was the former press secretary to the late Queen Elizabeth, said this. I think this is a quote worth sharing. I thought the speed with which the king issued a personal statement was commendable. Well, of course, she's going to come out with the palace line, isn't she? But this was interesting. I'm just glad the late Queen wasn't here to see this. Even she has been criticised for not acting sooner in all this. But let's be clear, any disgrace is of his own making. So she's making the distinction that although there's been criticism of the late Queen, and valid criticism, I can't, be Pollyanna about it, valid criticism, but she's making the point, let's not take our eye off the ball. Let's remember who the villain is here, and the villain, alleged villain who conducted misconduct in public office is actually Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. I don't think that's a bad thing to remind people. Thank you for the tip, Koala Blues. You're a legend. Thank you for the tip, Barbara. I do appreciate it. Law and Justice. No, Lightbringer. Yes, when it comes to law and justice, there should be no deference or special treatment of rich and powerful people, including royalty and presidents. And I will be going to Donald Trump's reaction in a little bit, Lightbringer. Thank you, Barbara, for your support. I do appreciate it. Now, there was something from Del Plummer, and there's also another one. There's a lot of good comments, but there was one I had from Del Plummer. Volcanic, here we go. I'll get this up. Where are you, Del? It keeps disappearing. Okay. Now, this is going around the internet, and I think I know, Del, what you're referring to. And what she's referring to is a valid thing, but I don't know whether it's necessarily connected. But I'll tell you what it is, because it is a very valid thing that people are concerned about. In regards to the grooming gangs, there's an archive, and that archive had all the material that covered all the magistrates' hearings, who presided over them, legal investigations, police action or lack of it, victim testimonies, people that were accused of crimes testimonies. It was a massive archive of, hundreds and hundreds of grooming gang cases. And in this archive, people have been fighting the good fight because the government was moving to demand that it was deleted. And that's really shocking, because once it goes, it's gone forever. Now, that is true. That's something that has really, really happened. And you'll be reading, people saying that this is a distraction and that, and you'll tend to dismiss it because you'll think, oh, that's just conspiracy theories, I'm not going to listen to that. But the actual issue that people, I believe, are really concerned about, I've looked into, and it exists. It's real. It's factual. Now, as far as I can determine, that deletion of the archive has been suspended. And I think the good point that people like Dell are making, and we shouldn't dismiss it, because this is how these cover-ups go for over 15 years. This is how governments and people high up in the establishment rock and roll. When the general public is completely captivated by a very big story, and there's proof of this in history, way back. You can bring out a million different examples. I didn't have time before this live. But when the public is distracted, that is when usually governments act in order to quickly get rid of something that might have been a little bit inconvenient. Oh, look, they're all looking over there. Let's get rid of something over here that we've been trying to find the right moment to get rid of, or indeed make an announcement, because it'll get basically just buried in all the media attention over Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. So when people make those points, you don't have to dismiss it, because they're bringing up a valid thing that is pretty procedural, that happens quite often. So thank you, Del, for your comment, and I hope I've actually explained it well. Now I'm going to go down. There was more really good comments here about Sarah being in the Middle East. Oh yes, done gone. Andrew Mountbatten will forever regret forgetting his sunglasses. Andrew looks rather like a frightened little girl. Yeah, and wouldn't we all look like, I guess what people are reacting to, when I said before that I stopped myself from being sympathetic, I think what the reaction, that visceral reaction to that photograph is, it's the fall from grace. It's the thing that this is a member of the royal family. Now, that shouldn't invoke sympathy. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that stark fall from grace. When we see anyone in the public eye, particularly someone that had such a high position in society, fall to such a devastating low. I mean, in the Me Too movement, we saw a lot of really high profile celebrities even go to jail, didn't we? And it does make you want to look, because you're just quite shocked and horrified that how the mighty can fall. That's a cliche, but it is what drives it, I think. How indeed the mighty can fall. Now, what is really gobsmacking, there's two ways of looking at this. There's criticism that the King and Queen Camilla went ahead with their duties yesterday, a few hours out of all this unfolding with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. I took it that it's just keep calm and carry on. It's the typical royal family response. Keep calm and carry on. We fulfill our duty regardless of what happens. The same thing happened through the Second World War. Indeed, the people of the UK relied on that. Keep calm and carry on. In the pandemic, the Queen saying we will meet again due to the lockdowns. It brought a lot of comfort to people because it was keep calm and carry on. I'm not saying that attending a fashion show is of that ilk, but it is Charles's version of keep calm and carry on. That's what I think. And I thought it was quite cute that Stella McCartney encouraged him to hang out with her dad. I thought that in more peaceful times, without really serious allegations being considered, that would have been quite cute. But not that cute this time. Now, Anna Wintour and Queen Camilla had the Queen actually greeted her without her sunglasses at St James Palace. So indeed, she kept going to mark the start of British Fashion Week. Now, obviously, they're trying to support British fashion. They're trying to support British interests. And like I said, they're trying to just continue. Not necessarily against the criticism of that. I can see validity in all sides of this debate. I look at people's, and sometimes people are really angry and really passionate. And I can see validity in that too, because we all don't react the same way. We all react our own way. And it doesn't mean what we're saying is wrong if we sort of find it a bit confronting, because we just find anyone that's really angry and passionate confronting. It doesn't mean that their viewpoint's wrong. It just means that we're finding it confronting. Do you get what I mean? So I think all responses to this are interesting and worth exploring. So that leads very neatly. That was a really good segue into this one. Alison Hammond has got a bollocking. During this morning's segment, she actually questioned the timing of the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor due to the fact that it being his 66th birthday, and the Daily Mail are piling on her, and social commentary are calling her moronic, weird, bizarre. They're just piling on. And that's why you have to be so careful how you respond to all of this, because people's feelings are up there and they'll come after you if they feel that you've missed the point of the situation. And look, understandably, people are really sensitive to misplaced sympathy. They find it offensive. And look, I can completely understand it. But having said inane, stupid things quite frequently when I've been on a live or something, I can sympathise with Alison Hammond a bit, because sometimes when you're looking for something to say, a brain fart comes out, and and you can't take it back. Once it's out, it's out. And I think she was trying to be balanced because she didn't want to seem like she was piling on. I'm not excusing it, because it was definitely a flub and a stupid mistake. But, we're all human. We're all human. Lay off a Daily Mail. Concentrate on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, I reckon. We all make mistakes. Now, the Donald. This is his reaction on Air Force One. And I can't do the Donald voice. I'm sorry. I wish I could. So I'll just say it in my normal Shauna voice. I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. The US president told reporters. This is a direct quote. It's very, very sad to me to see what's going on with that's King Charles, as brother. And, I can state the obvious here that we really need to have... Look, there are people here that believe that Donald Trump is completely innocent, and there are people here that believe that he is as guilty as anything, right? Regardless of that, if we skip over that, purely from a practical point of view, if someone is involved as much as he is in the files, being mentioned in the files, I don't see why he hasn't recused himself until this is all sorted out. Because any other person in public office that is so deeply involved with an issue of justice recuses themselves so that the investigation can go ahead without fear, favour or bias. And, you know, I think that's so important point to make. It doesn't matter if you believe he's innocent. It doesn't matter if you believe he's guilty. That's not the point. He has to step down, even temporarily, step down, not permanently. He was voted in, I know that, but he needs to recuse himself until this is settled. That's just my personal opinion. And I'm not making a stance on, you know, guilt or innocence. I'm just saying practicality, being sensible about this. How can this move ahead? How can the perception of justice be there if this man is sitting in charge of the whole bloody thing? It'd be like if King Charles was in charge of Andrew's investigation now. Would you put up with that? Would you put up with King Charles, you know, taking over the questioning under caution and taking over whether he's going to be charged, or taking over the decision of the possible judge if it ever goes to court about his punishment? Would you accept King Charles being in charge of the whole process? Then why would you accept Donald Trump being in charge of the USA process? Do you see my point? Now, I'm probably going to get slammed in the comments, but I think I make a valid point and I'm standing by it, okay? I'm standing by that. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be strong. All right, just wrapping up. I'm going to finish up on a light note. This was actually quite hilarious. I'm going to show you two of the memes. Pizza Express. Could we ask all our customers to please cancel bookings if you're unable to make your reservation? We had a no-show on a birthday party reservation at our Woking restaurant this evening. Thank you, the PR team. Oh, my Pizza Express team. Oh, my goodness, that's so funny. And that's from Chris H. The Beard. Okay. Now, this other one is hilarious. This is supposedly King Charles III's screensaver on his phone. And there's 66 missed calls from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and saying, I can't read it, I need better glasses. The coppers are here, I'm afraid. I just thought that was a great light note to finish on. So I'm going to leave it there, and thank you so much for joining me. I hope I've brought a little bit of new information to you, and we will keep a close eye on all this story. I'm actually going live with Paula Froelich on Monday morning my time, which is Sunday evening EST. We're going to do a live together, and we're going to dish the dirt and spill the tea and bring a bit of fun and juice and some serious points to this discussion. So I hope you'll join us on Paula's channel for that. Okay, everyone, see you soon. And goodbye for now. Awkward wave time. Bye.